Hello guys, are you able to hear me? Yeah. Hello guys, thank you for tuning into this session on income tax, and I think we'll wait for about 5 to 7 minutes for more people to join so we can start it properly. And in the meantime, I'd like to give a big thanks to the virtual lawyer team for having me here, and Dr. Manjula Batra for starting this a great initiative. And let me know if you have any questions in the meantime. I hope like all of you have like basic knowledge of income tax, or are you tax law students and expecting to join in tax or looking for another specialized field? I can see there are still people joining. Yeah, so I think we can start now. So in today's session, we will briefly, first I would like to briefly touch upon the basics of income tax, because like I can see that not many people know about tax law and what income taxes are, on what they are levied. And so we'll briefly touch upon the basics of income tax, the basis of its charge, and why the income tax is actually charged by the government. And then we'll discuss a brief relationship between international tax treaties and domestic tax laws, and how this relationship is maintained and on what basis that relationship existed, and how the digital economy now, Facebook, Amazon, Google, now digital businesses which don't require a physical presence, a brick and mortar store, have actually circumpassed those considerations which were made at the time of signing those international tax treaties, or at the time of even making income tax law. So we'll briefly touch upon it. We'll touch upon what changes the government has brought in, what changes the world is looking forward to make to capture the taxes, to capture the income which these type of businesses make in India. And then we can have our question and answer session, and I will also take some breaks in the middle of every part, so that if you have any question, you can ask me. If it's being too technical, don't be afraid to text me that it's being too technical. I will explain it again. I'll try to keep it as simple as possible. So let's talk about the basis of income tax. Income tax is generally levied on your income. Now, what is income? You say income would be any business that you carry on, any income derived from it, or even if you own a house, the rent that you earn from it is an income, and the tax is charged on that income. And there are two concepts of income. One is income, one is revenue. So the revenue is something when you sell a product, you get 100 rupees, that is your complete revenue. Income is from that 100 rupees when you deduct raw material cost, when you deduct your cost which you incurred, transportation cost, employee cost, salary cost, then you come to an income which is actually taxed under Income Tax Act. Now these two situations, income and revenue, is very important for today's session, because in digital world, it's very difficult to determine the expenses, and it's very difficult to determine the actual income on which taxes to be levied. So I hope you guys enjoy this session, and I hope it's not too technical, and if you have any problem, just let me know. I'm saying it again. So under income tax, like you know that we tax the income and not the revenue. And the history of income tax derived, the basic reason for income tax which was derived was that a person has an economic nexus in a particular country, and that's why you are taxed. Individual's nexus is determined by their presence. If I stay in India for 183 days, all my income is taxed in India. If a company is made in India, its income is taxed in India. If a company has its directors, its management in India, again, it's considered as Indian resident and taxed in India. So these are the only basic, like you consider the physical presence, the actual presence in a country for determining the economic nexus with the country, the economic relationship, and if you have such kind of economic relationship, then the law asks for you to be taxed in that country. And that was the whole reason for international tax agreements as well, where two countries came into agreement that, okay, I will not tax your resident, and I will tax only a portion of his revenue in my country based on the economic presence, physical presence. That was the main objective in traditional law. And it has been there since 1920s, it has been there since 1963s. There have been model tax conventions which actually rely on physical presence. And since 1990, the World Wide Web, 92 or 99, the growth in the digital sector, in the transformation in information technology society has been tremendous, and tax laws, like any other law, has not kept up with it. And that is one of the reason that you see many governments running after Facebook, running after Amazon, trying to tell on the press that they are not paying their due and fair taxes in India, because they don't have economic nexus as per the traditional rules. They don't have a physical presence. And for taxing, you need to have a physical presence to be taxed in that country. And that is the basic of all the international taxation agreement. And if you bring in a domestic law, like every person can say, okay, now government knows they can amend the tax law and bring in a law to tax digital presence as well. There is no stopping them. You are right, there is no stopping them in bringing them a law in taxing international presence or digital presence. But again, there are international tax treaties in force which restrict application of domestic law. If you bring in a law overriding the tax treaties, it may be against the Vienna Tax Convention. There may be a lot of trade issues. And the Supreme Court has in many cases said that you cannot override tax treaties. The most recent one is Vodafone case. I think a lot of people might have heard about it. The most recent is the Vodafone case, where the court says you cannot override a tax treaty. You cannot bring in an interpretation which overrides the specific words of treaty which actually rely on physical presence. And this is the main debate which all started this. And then the digital transformation with Amazon and Microsoft, IBM, they all came into only digital sector. I don't even think that Microsoft right now has a digital company incorporated in India. Since the digital transformation, they have the company in US, they provide services through that US entity. And now, coming to the Tax Act and coming to the treaties, they will not be taxed. And so there have been a lot of changes starting from 2000s, when an Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, it was a European organization in the beginning, and then many developed countries became member of that organization. India is not a member of that organization, but that organization started working on tax avoidance. It started bringing on measures to curb tax avoidance, where corporates don't pay their fair share of taxes. And in one of the reports, the digital transformation was the biggest step taken by OECD. In that report, OECD said that due to digital transformation, that report came out in 2015 and is publicly available for anyone to read. That report came in 2015, a final report of OECD, saying that due to digital transformation, the corporations have been able to avoid paying taxes in a country where they earn a lot of their revenues. So the OECD says that you can have an economic nexus with a country without actually being present there, and that's why many people are able to avoid the taxes. And the OECD recommended like three major measures, only interim measures. They were not final measures. OECD recommended, first, you can bring in withholding taxes, which I will explain now. Second, they told that you can amend your domestic taxes, and they will work on the international tax treaties. And third, they said that you can impose any other form of taxes, which we will also discuss. And India, as we all know, has imposed all the three measures in 2020. It has imposed the withholding tax, it has changed the domestic law, and it has also imposed a different tax not covering under Income Tax Act, but a different statute altogether for taxing of digital economy, for taxing of the digital businesses. Now let's discuss what were the three measures which the OECD proposed and which the India took into consideration. So first one was withholding taxes. Withholding taxes are basically nothing like a tax deducted at source. When you are paid your salary, which is more than 30,000 rupees, then a 10% tax is deducted from it by the employer and he pays it to the government on your behalf. And you can claim a credit of it at the end of the year when you file your tax return. So it's simple. If you are getting paid 30,000, I will deduct 10%, that is 3,000, and I will actually pay you 27,000. The remaining 3,000 I will pay to the government on your behalf, which you can claim as a refund or a credit for reducing your tax liability at the end of the year. Government introduced withholding taxes for digital economy starting October 2020. They introduced it in this year's budget, February 2020, and they have introduced it for all the transactions starting from 2020. And these transactions pertain to digital transactions. So any economic operator, now what it says, I would like to read the text because it's really interesting and it covers a whole large class of people. So this is Income Tax Act. Under 194O, they have introduced this new section, which is applicable for all the transactions happening, for all the digital transactions happening after October 2020. It says that notwithstanding anything contrary contained in any of the provisions of Part B of this chapter, where sale of goods or provision of services of an e-commerce participant is an Indian supplier, Indian online supplier. For example, I have a store, I sell products online on Amazon as well. So this class of persons is being covered here. So any sale of goods or provision of services of an e-commerce participant is facilitated by an e-commerce operator. E-commerce operators are someone who owns the website, who facilitates acting as an intermediary like Amazon, Flipkart, eBay, and in some cases even quicker. So if I have a store in India and I sell products through Amazon, this section is applicable on me and Amazon both. And what it's required to do is that at the time of credit of amount of sale or services or both to the account of economic participant, that is me, or at the time of payment thereof to such economic participant by any mode, deduct income tax at the rate of 1% of the gross amount of such sale or services or both. So according to this section, if I am selling products on Amazon, Amazon will be required to deduct 1% of the sale consideration at the time of at the time of making the payment to me. Now this is very clear for a lot of people that it's okay, it's fine, it should be there, taxes deducted at source, government will know, okay, the sale has happened. But again, think of a situation where it's not Amazon, it's quicker. Not even quicker. It's a small entity like probably eBay who directly facilitates the sale. You make the payment, the customer who is buying the product makes the payment directly to the seller, that is me. And eBay or Amazon does not act as a collection agency in the middle. How will they deduct 1% of tax? They cannot. And the most interesting part is that this section has an explanation which says, for the purposes of this subsection, any payment made by a purchaser of goods, that is a customer, or recipient of services, directly to me, e-commerce participant, for the sale of goods or services facilitated by Amazon, shall be deemed to be the amount credited or paid by Amazon. So it has a deeming provision. that if a customer pays the money directly to me for sale of goods, then it will be deemed that Amazon made the payment. And because of such deeming provision, Amazon will be required to deduct 1%. Now, like I said, if the Amazon is not acting as a collection agency, they will have to deduct 1% from the sale out of their own pockets. It's a huge cost to a corporation, and they will have to collect that 1% from me. They cannot, being an international organization, now Amazon have a business in India, so probably they won't have a problem in collecting that 1% from me. But think about eBay. If they don't have a business operation or any company in India, then how will they recover this 1% cost from me? It will be a loss of cost altogether, completely. 1% of this whole payment, according to most of you, may not be too much. Like 1% of 100 rupee good is 1. It's not that much. A company should not go out of cost. But like I said, there is a huge difference between revenue and income. Revenue is the whole amount, that is 100. Income, you may also have a lot of expenditure. You may be only earning 1 rupee out of it. You may be only earning 2 rupee out of it, especially considering that you are a commission agent. You have to deduct, probably if you have a new website, I will charge very little commission from the sale of goods and products. I will have a very mediocre website. And then if I charge like 1 or 2% of commission on sales, and directly the sales are affected between customer and the seller, I would be required to then deduct 1% from my own pocket. The e-commerce operator, the website owner, is not earning anything, and he will have to recover it from the supplier. This is not so much practical situation which you will see happening. Probably they have higher commission rates, but still it goes out of their own pocket, and no corporations, none of the corporates want to incur huge cost. It's 100 rupee today, and think about the total sales that Amazon make every single day, and it's 1% of all that amount. So it comes to a quite huge figure. But this is still fine, because this is the tax on the seller, who is an Indian, and he can claim a credit of, like I said, withholding taxes. He can claim a credit at the end of the year when he files the return. So no harm done, still it's fine. Then we come to the amendment done in Income Tax Act to also cover digital presence in India. So Income Tax Act before this amendment used to cover non-residents who accrue or who have income which is accrued or arising or received in India. So any income which was received or accrued from India of a non-resident was taxable in India. But also if he has a business connection in India, then he will be also taxed in India. If I don't have a business connection, then I won't be taxed in India, and that was very clear, the Income Tax Act. Now, what do you mean by a business connection? It was a very wide term, but it was also relying on physical presence, which was actually held by a lot of courts. In 2020, actually in 2016, first the government changed it, brought an amendment saying that if you have a significant economic presence in India, then it will be deemed you have a business connection in India. And a non-resident will be taxed having a business connection in India as well. What is a significant economic presence? Significant economic presence was defined as having a particular threshold of revenue derived from that country. So for India, a particular threshold of income, if derived from the users in India, then it will be deemed that a non-resident has a business connection in India, no matter if he has a fixed base, no matter if he has physical presence or not. It will be deemed that he has a significant presence and will be taxed accordingly. Now, in 2016, when it was brought in, there were tax treaties already in force which were not changed, and tax treaties strictly restricted taxing rights on basis of physical presence. And that's why India could not implement significant economic proposal at that time, and no rules and regulations came forward after that. But in 2020, OECD, like I told you, is still working on how to amend the international taxes rules, what should be the restrictions, what should be the source rules, what should be the residence rules. They are still working on it, and they had bring in the deadline of end of 2020 to bring in these regulations. And this deadline now we can see 2020 is about to come to an end, and due to coronavirus, all the process have been slowed down. And if OECD does not comes in with a proposal, then all the countries, most of the international consensus is that they will start taxing non-residents on digital presence unilaterally, and they will not follow international tax treaties on that basis. And India has then again in 2020 introduced significant economic presence as business connection, and it is applicable from next year. Because OECD is still discussing on the OECD's deadline for the report is 2020. But then again, if there are tax treaties, you cannot simply bypass them with domestic laws. So even if OECD does not comes up with a report at the end of the deadline of 2020, significant economic presence is still could be challenged before the Supreme Court, before High Courts, before all the tax authorities that they violate tax treaties. Nihit, can I ask you to keep this question and I will tell you how they are taxed? I will definitely inform you when we pause for the question and answer, and this is quite a good question. So like I was discussing, that significant economic presence will be taxed, and tax treaties will not allow it. So even if OECD does not comes up with a final report, tax treaties will bar India from taxing non-residents who don't have a physical presence. But with many countries like low tax haven countries like Bahamas, British Virgin Islands, where they don't have tax laws, they have like tax rate at 0%. India does not have tax treaties with them, and if a company is incorporated there, having significant economic presence in India, then domestic law will apply very squarely and there won't be an issue. But where there are issues, where the tax treaties will apply and domestic law will not be applied for significant economic presence, in that case, India has introduced the third advice which was given by OECD, that is taxing in another form other than Income Tax Act. So in Finance Act 2020, in Finance Act 2016 actually, India introduced equalization levy, which used to tax business to business transactions, wherein it is provided that if it is also commonly called as Google tax. Very clearly, you can search Google tax. It's actually applicable on advertisement sales, digital advertisement sales. And it came in Finance Act 2020, and it is not the part of Income Tax Act. It says that if a non-resident comes into a contract with an Indian resident for sale of digital advertisement, then the Indian resident at the time of making payment for consideration of such sale of advertisement has to deduct 6% of income tax and pay it to the government. This came in 2016. In 2020 Finance Act, this scope has been expanded to all types of digital transactions. In 2020, a new equalization levy at the rate of 2% has been imposed on even business to consumer transactions like eBay. If it does not have a residence in India, a resident company in India, and it sells products to any of Indian resident, if I buy a product from eBay right now, then eBay will be required to give actually 2% tax to the government. Yeah, I can see that Devashish says it's a union levy and it's not income tax, but I would like to that's a controversy here. That's the major controversy, that is it an income tax or not? And in my opinion, to be honest, there are a lot of similarities between the provisions of equalization levy, between the provisions of Income Tax Act, and even in the tax treaties, if you read it properly, that equalization levy is actually a tax on income and capital. Whether it's a union levy, whether it's a indirect tax, it's a tax on an income or capital of an entity, and that's why it's similar to income taxes. It's not under income tax, so you cannot call it as an income tax, but it's still a tax on the income of an entity. And that's actually the main argument. Thank you for pointing out, Devashish, because it's I forgot mentioning this. At the time of introducing this equalization levy, the government said that it does not violate the tax treaties because it is not an income tax. We are taxing it directly as a turnover on your revenue. We are not taxing on the income. And in the contrary, in the counterpoint, there are many taxes which are taxed on turnover and not on income, and they are still income tax. For example, dividend. For example, interest income. These incomes under if you fall under an international tax treaty, the tax is charged on the revenue and not on the income. Directly 10% or directly 15% of tax is charged on your dividend income or on your interest income that you receive from India. And even on royalties, the tax is on the revenue and not on the income. And that's why it doesn't make a difference that you are taxing the turnover and not the and not the income. And government actually relied on OECD reports saying that, oh, look, OECD recommended us to bring another type of taxation and it won't fall under international income tax treaties. But OECD recommended it in a different form, in a different manner. And also OECD also specifically caveat, there was provided a specific caveat that it may be seen contrary to many international treaties, including trade treaties. So there may be violation of trade law, there may be violation of even income tax treaties if you bring it in this manner. And it's actually quite controversial. And this equalization levy is actually challenged before Delhi High Court by MasterCard recently. So we actually await for an outcome about it. But coming back to the basics of equalization levy, that it's now expanded to all types of transactions which are happening in India digitally between a non-resident and an Indian resident. So Amazon has an Indian entity, so Amazon does not fall into that. But if you buy anything from Amazon.com and not Amazon from .in, then Amazon.com, being an international company, may be required to pay tax of 2%, equalization levy of 2% on the sale that is affected. Now, the problems with equalization levy, jurisdiction for filing. The jurisdiction for filing these cases of income tax is not provided in CPC or CRPC. It's income tax tribunals are actually, the procedure is provided under Income Tax Act and income tax rules. Income tax tribunals are appellate courts, and then before that there is also CIT appeal, where you go for the first appeal, and then income tax tribunals, and then High Court and Supreme Court. And it's also, this is also a similarity with equalization levy, because with equalization levy you have to follow the same procedure as Income Tax Act. Even the assessment will be done similarly as Income Tax Act, as provided in Income Tax Act. Let me read out the provision of equalization levy as provided in the Finance Act 2020. It's burdened with a lot of issues there. Yeah. Section 16. Yeah, and the procedure will be followed of Income Tax Act. Section 165 of Finance Act 2020 says that, not 165, 165A. 165 is for 2016, the equalization levy on sale of advertisement. Section 165A says that on and from first day of April 2020, there shall be charged an equalization levy at the rate of 2% of the amount of consideration received or receivable by e-commerce operator on e-commerce supplier or services made, provided or facilitated by it. So here the issue comes, what is consideration? 2% will be charged on the consideration of e-commerce operator, of the website owner, of the digital platform owner, and on the consideration which is received by it for sale of products, sale of services, provided by it or facilitated by it. So like Amazon does not provide you goods. It facilitates goods, it connects a customer to a supplier, and it facilitates the sale of goods. So in such a case where Amazon is there, Amazon International Entity, where it facilitates such a sale, what would be the equalization levy charge of 2% on? What is the consideration here? consideration is commission which the Amazon is receiving, or the whole gross amount of sale which Amazon acts as a collection agent receives on behalf of the supplier. So here, like, we apply contract law, and we can say that it's applicable on the consideration which is of the e-commerce operator, as clearly mentioned here, which is the commission which they actually charge. So very clear, 2% on the commission, no problem. Digital presence you have in India, that's why you are taxed, not a problem. But what about if you are receiving a consideration in form of royalty? I have a digital platform. I license it out to an Indian entity, and that Indian company sells or facilitates sale of products in India to Indian residents. Would it be said that I am the e-commerce operator who has facilitated the sale indirectly, and I am receiving the license fee in the form of royalty? Would the equalization levy apply on such a case? If we go to the only reading of equalization levy as provided in the Finance Act, very clearly yes. And there may be chances of double taxation. Under Income Tax Act, royalty is chargeable to income tax, and under Finance Act, the same would be charged. This equalization levy would also be applicable, and there may be double taxation on same source of income. And to address this issue, Income Tax Act brought in another amendment under the domestic law, saying that if equalization levy is charged, then your income will not be taxable under the Act. And such a provision is only applicable from next year. So what happens between now to next year? If there is a sale, if there is a royalty income, if there is a license income, would there be a double tax? Because such an exemption is not extended to present situation where equalization levy is already applicable, and it's not available vice versa. If you have paid income tax on such income, then equalization levy does not provide for any exemption. So if I want to choose to pay income tax, there is a provision under Domestic Income Tax Act which allows me to choose to follow international tax treaties or to follow domestic law. If I choose to follow domestic law and pay taxes on my income rather than revenue, then I just file the return, I claim expenses, and I pay tax on my income, which may be beneficial for a lot of people. And if I do that, still equalization levy would be applicable, which is a tax directly on your revenue, directly on your turnover. Now, to give you a small example of how disastrous it could be, for example, I am a new company in the market, so I give a lot of discounts. For the first year, I say, okay, I have a lot of investments, like happens with a lot of startups. I take a lot of investments from investors from the market, and I decide that I will go into loss for first few years, and then I will go into the profit. And because I want to make a market presence, because I want to have an impression in the market. And in such a scenario, when I am receiving any consideration which is so less than my expenses altogether, still there is a taxation of equalization levy of 2%. Income Tax Act does not provide for it. Income Tax Act is very clear. There is no tax on loss. You can file your tax return under Income Tax Act, claim the deductions, and there is no tax under Income Tax Act on your business income, on your profits, because there is loss. But equalization levy does not give you that relief. Equalization levy is directly applicable no matter what, no matter you have an expense or not, and it is applicable. And its threshold is so low. Its threshold is provided just at the turnover threshold is provided at 2 crores in 1 year, and that threshold is revenue, not the income. So only 2 crores per year if you make a sale of 2 crores. Then, and that is gross sales, not even your revenue. That is gross sales. So that is not the consideration of 2 crores. 2 crores of gross sales that are being done through the website is covered under equalization levy. Out of those 2 crores, let's say 20% is my commission charges, which is standard for many major digital platforms. Then it would be 40 lakhs, and those 40 lakhs would be I'm earning a revenue of only 40 lakhs per year. I may have more expenses because of my logistics costs, because of my employees, because I'm new in the business. I have given a lot of discount as well on my own costs. So there are a lot of expenses which may go on till 45 lakhs. But still, the equalization levy rules, law says that I'm required to deduct 2%. I'm required to pay 2% of equalization levy on my 40 lakhs. So that's really disastrous because it comes to a huge cost to a business. And taxes are nothing, but they are cost to a business. And it's really a determinative factor for a business to enter into a particular market or not. And after introduction of equalization levy and other things, many businesses will question before entering into Indian market because tax will add to their cost in entry. And it will have a major effect on the market. And other than the sale of products and goods, I would like to answer one question which Devashish put in. Will digital online examination provided by foreign examination boards in India chargeable to equalization levy? They may be chargeable to equalization levy if... So this question, but let me explain this question to our viewers first. Now you can see many in coronavirus times, many government organizations, the UGC saying that examinations should be held online if possible, and online examinations generally are licensed through foreign entities. They are the owners, they are the platform providers, and if Government of India has to pay any money to for such service to foreign entities, then such digital platform facilitation would be covered under equalization levy. And it could be that central government may bring a notification that contracts with central government won't fall under this, or the central government will basically focus on more digital Indian resident platforms rather than going for foreign platforms, because there are a lot of Indian resident platforms as well. Now coming to other than equalization levy covering supply of sale and services to Indian resident, these transactions which we discussed till now is basically between a non-resident and an Indian resident. Equalization levy in 2020 also expanded its scope to a non-resident and a non-resident. If a person in US contracts with a person in UK for a sale of data, then equalization levy is applicable if that data pertains to Indian users. And it's really difficult to ascertain whether the data pertains to Indian users, because there are a lot of, in commercial sense, there are a lot of contracts which are on regional basis. US entity may contract with a company on regional Asia basis that give us the data of all of Asia. How will you determine how much of it belongs to India, how much of it belongs to China, how much of it belongs to Pakistan? You don't know. And there are regional contracts, and in such a scenario, you will have to even bifurcate the consideration that you pay for, that you receive for sale of regional data. You will have to bifurcate, okay, Indian users is this much, I should charge 2% of for the Indian users. You don't know that. It's very difficult. It only increases administration cost and also increases litigation risk. Now, other than this basic that equalization levy is applicable, these three things have been brought in by the government. The major controversy which revolves around this situation is whether equalization levy will fall under international tax treaties or not. Like we discussed, like Devashish also pointed out, that it is an Indian union levy, not an income tax. So it should not fall under Income Tax Act. Income tax treaties will not apply. International treaties will not apply. And what does international treaties do? They don't only restrict your taxing rights, they also prevent double taxation. So if in case I am having business in America, then America wants to tax, and I have a physical presence there, America will tax me. But under the India and America International Tax Treaty, if America taxes me, I will get a credit in India, the same tax credit in India. While I pay my taxes, I can claim the credit and I can reduce my tax liability. That's a very clear situation provided in international tax treaties. But with equalization levy falling outside the scope of income tax, there is no benefit provided to businesses from tax treaties, from even from the point of restricting the taxing rights of India. So no credit, and there are chances of double taxation. There is a chances of extra cost, administration cost. Everything will be increasing in this scenario after bringing in of equalization levy. But Indian taxpayers, let me see one comment I have here, interesting one. Indian taxpayers may apply withholding taxes on payment of e-commerce suppliers. I cannot see a full comment here, Devashi, so I don't know. I cannot comment it here right now. And Nishu, the limitation period of filing the equalization levy and the returns for equalization levy is provided in Income Tax in Finance Act 2020, and there is a whole procedure provided for it. Now, coming to the cost and the discrimination between a resident and a non-resident, there is also another provision under all international tax treaties, and it's called non-discrimination provision. It says that a national of one country will not be discriminated on basis of nationality for taxation purposes. And now the OECD commentary in many cases says that residence is different from nationality. Taxation happens on basis of residence. And if you are not resident and you are being discriminated on basis of being a non-resident, then you don't fall under that nationality clause. But here, the equalization levy has been introduced in whole of India except state of Jammu and Kashmir. And Income Tax Act is applicable in the state of Jammu and in the Union Territory of Kashmir. It is applicable there, so it's also a discrimination between a resident and a non-resident there. If you transact with a person who is in state of Jammu, then equalization levy is not applicable. But if you transact with a person who is in Delhi or Mumbai or anywhere else in India, then equalization levy is applicable. So this is not a case of discrimination on basis of residence and non-resident. One can argue that this is a basis of discrimination on basis of nationality, and that's why non-discrimination provision is applicable and equalization levy cannot be charged under the income tax treaties. And this non-discrimination provision, this is to be emphasized, non-discrimination provision is applicable on all taxes, even outside Income Tax Act, even outside income tax and in tax on capital. It's applicable even on indirect taxes, everything. So it's a really interesting situation which we see right now, that in 2020 there are so much developments taken by Government of India only to tax digital businesses which can easily avoid paying taxes in a country because they don't have a physical presence there. And it's not just the Indian point of view. Even in UK, even in France, even in Italy, similar taxes have been introduced, but their threshold is quite high, about 750 million euros. So in those countries, these taxes at 3% or 2% or even 1% have been introduced, and they are similar to equalization levy as introduced in India. And it's a growing international consensus that everyone wants to tax digital businesses. And it's not wrong, because businesses like Facebook, who deal in our data, who collects a lot of data, can deal in our data without paying any tax in India. Why? Because it does not have a physical presence in India. So it's a correct concern of the government where the tax is being avoided, but is it implemented in a correct manner? Only a exemption is provided under Income Tax Act, not under the equalization levy provisions. The equalization levy provisions are very similar to Income Tax Act. They are specifically kept outside Income Tax Act only to avoid application of international tax international tax treaties. And one more thing which is very important, which is very interesting to see, is that equalization levy is not applicable if you have a physical presence in India. If you have a physical presence in India, you pay income tax on that sales, on those sales you do through digital platforms under Income Tax Act. So it clearly creates a similarity between the taxation under equalization levy provisions and under Income Tax Act. And this is the growing change in dynamics of income taxes, which is still being considered at international context by many organizations on how to bring in the proper change to give developing countries enough rights of taxation, to give developed countries enough rights for taxation, and to properly bring these digital economies, digital business under the proper fair tax net, which is always a huge amount of debate what is fair. Do we have fine print of communication discussion in Rajya Sabha regarding equalization levy? Yes, sir. She said we have equalization levies memorandum for 2016, but there is no such memorandum provided for 2020 in Finance Act. So whenever Finance Act is released, my friends, then Finance Act is passed every year, Finance Bill. And when it is passed, they always have a memorandum, an explanatory memorandum explaining why they are bringing these provisions in tax. So it's a budget. And if in 2016, when this equalization levy was introduced, at that moment, there was an explanatory memorandum relying on OECD completely, like OECD suggested it, so we are bringing it. But in 2020, when it was expanded to customer base as well, there is no explanatory memorandum for that purpose, because Finance Bill of 2020 did not contain this expansion provision. But when it was passed in Parliament by Finance Act 2020, it did contain this provision of expansion of equalization levy. So as we can see that there are lot of changing dynamics in international context that people desperately want to tax digital businesses. So it will be really interesting to see how it now goes further on, how the situation now turns out, because in 2020, because of coronavirus, I don't know if OECD will come up with a proper consensus. So what will happen after that is really interesting point to see, and especially following MasterCard case law, which we have to see how the courts actually interpret it, whether it's an income tax or a union levy outside income tax. And even if it is a union levy outside income tax, I wouldn't say, in my opinion, that it's a correct way to implement it because of various reasons, because of increasing cost. So let's see what are the developments in this. It has been a really interesting session. Let me know if you have any more questions on the discussions we had today, and I would be happy to address them. Let me see if there are any more questions which are left out, because I think there was one which I said, can you tell, okay, Nihit asked me, can you tell which section under which e-commerce entities are taxed? Yes, Nihit. So e-commerce entities generally are normal entities which are taxed as well, generally under Income Tax Act. If you are in India, if you have any business income, you are taxed in India. But e-commerce entities which are not resident in India, if they have a business connection in India, they are taxed. Now the definition of business connection has been provided under Section 9. And Section 9 has been amended by 2020 to include significant economic presence. And it's provided in, let me tell you even the explanation where they have included the significant economic presence. Yeah, explanation 2A, if you see. It has provided for significant economic presence and you will be taxed. And there she said, I think there is a case, there was a daily order of, I think, 2 or 3 days ago in MasterCard case, where they have also challenged the legal provisions of equalization levy. I am still to get the details on what the basis they have taxed it, on what basis they have put this issue before the court, challenged its legality, but it has been challenged. There is a latest order. You can send me your email and I would be happy to share the order with you, the interim order. Does anyone have any other case, any other issue, any other question, any other query? Not with respect to equalization levy, but generally on income tax. So I think if no one have a question, we can end this session. And really thank you for listening to this session. If you have any query, any doubt, please email me And if you even need my number, you can email me. I will be happy to clear those doubts. I will be happy to even give my contact number if there is something relevant, and we can discuss on phone as well. And thank you so much. And if you like it, definitely let me know. We can have other sessions on income tax on other issues. It's not just the one. Thank you so much. Bye. And thank you, virtual lawyer, again for having me here. Bye.